Hi everybody, welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
And I'm Tom, and today we're going to be talking about someone who has won the Nobel Prize in Literature, and this person won it for writing non-fiction. The award is usually given for people who write fiction or novels, but this is a rare occasion in which Svetlana Alexievich, did I say that right?
Sounds about right, Alexeyevich, yeah. I think
sounds pretty close.
Alexei would be, I guess, her father's sort of name, and Alexeyevich means, I guess, child of Alexei, something like that.
In Russian or
yeah, kind of.
Yeah, I've heard it from Iceland, like I knew somebody named Moses Dottir, which means daughter of someone by the name of Moses.
Yeah.
But in any case, this is a writer from Belarus, which is close to Russia there. It used to be part of the USSR, and she won the Nobel Prize last year, 2015, in literature. So we're going to be talking about her and some of the books she has written. So let's get to it. Let's read the entire contents of our lesson right now.
Belarusian journalist Svetlana Alexievich won the 2015 Nobel Prize in Literature. Although it has been more than 50 years since the last non-fiction writer was awarded the prize, the Nobel Committee selected Alexievich for her polyphonic writing, A Monument to Suffering and Courage in Our Time. Alexievich was born in 1948 in Ukraine. Soon after, however, her family settled in Belarus, where Alexeyevich's parents worked as teachers. She started working as a journalist after graduating from university and began collecting material for her first book, War's Unwomanly Face, an oral history of Soviet women in World War II. The details of the Soviet experiences discussed in this book had never been talked about before. Her next work was Zinky Boys, Soviet Voices from a Forgotten War, a collection of first-hand accounts of the Soviet-Afghan War. The title refers to the zinc coffins that were used to ship dead bodies back to the Soviet Union. The book depicts the unease of mothers who anxiously waited for their children to return home from war. It caused controversy when first published in Russia, which eventually led to Alexeyevich spending 10 years in exile. She went on to publish Voices from Chernobyl, an account of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. Through interviews with more than 500 survivors over the course of 10 years, this work records the nuclear cleaners' horrible experiences after the disaster in 1986. It makes a point of sharing the emotions of the people involved and criticizing the incompetence of the Soviet leadership. For Alexeyevich, non-fiction is a genre that allows her to get close to reality. Her works demonstrate a painful but enchanting reality in which she weaves different voices into a compelling narrative. In the future, Alexeyevich will continue to record the diverse voices of Russia.
It is now time to talk about the contents of our article for today. The title here is Svetlana Alexeyevich. Did I say that right, Pat?
I'm mostly guessing. I think it's Alexeyevich.
Sounds close enough here. We're not studying Russian, but in any case, she has won the Nobel Prize for Literature. At least she did that in 2015 last year. Now, she's from a place called Belarusia, and so we say she's Belarusian journalist Svetlana Alexeyevich. Won the 2015 Nobel Prize in Literature. A journalist is basically a reporter, someone who gathers news and information to be published in a newspaper, magazine, or on a website. You know, sometimes it can be a regular journalist who writes stories, but a photojournalist would be somebody who takes pictures. And she won the Nobel Prize in Literature, which is kind of rare.
Yeah, it's a bit unusual because, as we said in our introduction, the Nobel Prize for Literature more often goes to somebody who has written a fictional story. The article says, although it has been more than 50 years since the last non-fiction writer was awarded the prize, The Nobel Committee selected Alexeyevich for her polyphonic writing, and they also called it a monument to suffering and courage in our time. So non-fiction is just, that could be real stories, history, biography of famous people, journalist kind of stuff. And those people seldom win the Nobel Prize. However, Alexeyevich was selected by the Nobel Committee. A committee is a group of people who kind of meet to decide things or organize things or run things and so on. And they thought her work was deserving of the Nobel Prize. They called it polyphonic writing. So polyphonic would mean using a lot of different, so poly is kind of more than one, it means various. Polyphonic, lots of sounds, lots of voices. That's what polyphonic means, kind of lots of different types of notes and sounds and these things. And her writing kind of creates that. It's almost like a musical effect. And it's also a monument to suffering and courage. So a monument is usually something that's built to honor someone. It's normally a thing, like even the Taj Mahal is itself a monument. But a monument here means a literary monument. They've written a book or stories or reported to kind of really honor the suffering and courage of people in our times, in our recent history.
Indeed. And, of course, she did receive that prize as a journalist and not a fiction writer, as we've mentioned. Now, let's move on to the next paragraph here. It says, Alexeyevich was born in 1948 in Ukraine. Ukraine is an independent country that used to be part of the Soviet Union, and they're having some problems with Russia. And I think that war situation is still going on. There are a lot of Russians who live in Ukraine. A lot of Ukrainians speak Russian. So some people think it should be part of Russia. Some people say no, it should be independent. But in any case, way back in 1948, she was born there. And soon after, however, her family settled in Belarus, where Alexeyevich's parents worked as teachers. Belarus, I think, is also another former Soviet Socialist Republic that is in that general area.
Yeah, it's a bit further north, just kind of east of Poland, if you happen to have a map. So her parents were working as teachers, so she's got this kind of educational ideas in her family. And she started working as a journalist after graduating from university. And during this time, she began collecting material, so information, interviews, stories, and so on, for her first book, War's Unwomanly Face, an oral history, which is a spoken history, a history of people's stories that people have told, not that historians have found out. That's what an oral history is. You go and listen to people and you record what they say, and you just present it. You don't really change their words. You kind of use the words that people have told. In this case, the people were Soviet women in World War II. Tom's mentioned the USSR, the United Soviet States of Russia, which was this large kind of almost like an empire, a big collection of communist states ruled by Russia that were from basically the end of the Second World War until the start of the 1990s, when the Soviet Union collapsed and all these countries like Ukraine and Belarus became independent. But before then, this whole area was Soviet Russia. It was controlled from Russia, and the people who lived there would have been called Soviets.
Indeed, and the Russians or the Soviets suffered quite a bit in World War II, so she's giving them a voice here, an oral history, especially of the women of the Soviet Union during World War II, because I guess mostly we hear from the men, you know, what it was like in battle and stuff, but women suffered as well, so she gave them a voice here in this book, in her first book, and the details of the Soviet experiences discussed in this book had never been talked about before. So it was kind of new and interesting, and I'm sure a lot of people read this and thought, I never realized Soviet women had something to say.
Yeah, I mean, during that time, of course, the Germans invaded the Soviet Union, so that will have been part of the story, what it was like to be back home when the men were away fighting. These are the kind of things. So then Alexeyevich continued with her writing. The article says her next work was Zinky Boys, Soviet Voices from a Forgotten War. So again, telling more stories about Soviet people during wars, telling the stories that people don't know. People know about the battles. People know about some of the political stuff. They don't necessarily know the voices of ordinary people, which seems to be what Alexeyevich really wants to report in her efforts.
Right, so this is kind of an interesting title, Zinky Boys, Soviet Voices from a Forgotten War. It's a collection of first-hand accounts of the Soviet-Afghan War. An account, it's not something that you're using to keep track of money. In this case, it just means testimony or information, a report or description from somebody. This is my account of the events that took place in Kaohsiung during the Meilidao incident. Okay, someone may have written about their accounts of that incident down in Kaohsiung a number of years ago. And indeed, the title refers to the zinc coffins that were used to ship dead bodies back to the Soviet Union. That's kind of interesting here. Zinc here is a material. It's an element, actually. It's kind of a metal. It's often used with iron, so iron does not rust. And it's also used in brass.
Yep, and in this case, it was used to make coffins, which are the boxes that dead bodies are kept in when they're either moved around or buried. It's what you use at funerals. So there were coffins made of zinc, so that's why the title is Zinky Boys. That's what it refers to, or that's what it's kind of means it's based on. These zinc coffins were used to ship dead bodies back to the Soviet Union. Here we're using the word ship as a verb, and it basically means to transport something. And it doesn't necessarily mean transport by water. If you ship something, it could be overland in a truck, or it could be even through the air in a plane, or across the water in an actual ship. But it just means to transport something from A to B. In this case, they were taking bodies from the Soviet-Afghan War, a war between the Soviet Union and Afghanistan, and they were sending the poor bodies of the soldiers who'd been killed back home.
Interesting idea for a book, eh? And we're going to continue talking about the Nobel Prize winner Svetlana Alexeyevich in just a couple of seconds, but right now we're going to take a break and listen to our Chinese teacher.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenny. 我们今天呢要来看新闻，新闻的主角呢是诺贝尔的文学奖得主，他是一位白俄罗斯的记者。不过呢，在距离上一位这种非小说的文学奖作者，这可是超过了50年。好，我们来看这个时间上的时态怎么用。从上一个 non-fiction writer 到他为止，已经有50年。那这里是It has been more than 50 years since the last non-fiction writer was awarded the prize. 我们知道 since 这个部分用的是过去式，表示过去的一个起点，然后呢到现在为止，所以前面的句子要用到完成式 has been. 当然我们晓得它是 non-fiction writer. 来看一下 non英文里面有很多的字首字尾 non 这个是常见的一个字首，中文呢翻成非，所以当你说 non-fiction 是非小说类的。那有没有别的片语类似的组合字呢？非常的多，随便来看看。如果你讲 non-smoking 非吸烟区， non-contagious 不是传染性的，如果是 non-biological， 如果像 non-biological brothers, non-biological parents， 那就是你是非亲生的父母或兄弟，所以这个字首部分要特别的注意，而且也非常的好用。提到这位作者，他得奖的原因是因为他呢代表着的是一种 polyphonic writing。Poly 这个也是另外一个字首 Poly 它基本上就是代表 several 好几个不同的，所以说 polyphonic 意思就是有多种的不同的声音，多音的，这也是他得奖的重要因素。那我们再来看一下这位作者他的生平背景，他其实并不是白俄罗斯人， 他出生于乌克兰，不过后来才移居到白俄罗斯。家里呢，父母是当老师，自己呢，大学毕业后开始当记者。这边提到了他第一部的书 Wars on Womanly Face， 我们中文把它翻成战争的非女性面孔。Unwomanly， 前面说到 non 就代表非，另外一个字首也代表否定的，那就是 on。像这里很明显 unwomanly 就是 womanly 的相反，所以 on 这个字首它的意思比较是有对立的不同。下面继续提到刚刚说到的这第一本书，它的内容呢，主要是跟第二次世界大战中里面苏联女性的一个口述历史。但是这边呢，有一个文法要注意 The details of the Soviet experiences discussed in this book。 注意到 discussed 这其实是过去分词，当然讲的就是前面这些经验是在书里面被讨论的，这边的一个过去分词用的其实就是一个分词片语来修饰它是什么样的经验。再来我们继续看下一段，下面呢刚刚提完了他第一本书，接下来还有另外一部的作品，这个作品也很特别，光是看名字就会觉得很不一样。我们中文把它翻成新皮娃娃兵阿富汗战争的苏维埃悲歌，还是跟战争有关，但是这个是一个报道文学，它谈的是苏联和阿富汗战争的第一手报道。这个标题当然看起来有一点奇怪，可是这个呢还牵涉到了一个化学的元素锌 zinc。 那 zinc coffins 是镀锌的棺材，那标题看到了新皮娃娃兵，理由就在这里，因为这些战死的士兵他们回到苏联的时候是放在镀锌的棺材里被运回来的。
Hi guys, we're going to take a short break and then we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about the Nobel Prize-winning journalist Svetlana Alexievich. We're talking about her second book, Zinky Boys, and we're talking about the stories of soldiers sent, or dead bodies sent back in zinc coffins from a war, people who were in the war and people who are at home. Because as the article says, the book depicts the unease of mothers who anxiously waited for their children to return home from war. So it's the stories not of the soldiers so much, but of the mothers, the people at home, the women. And the word depicts, this just means shows or portrays. So these stories, these accounts, they really show how anxious, how kind of terrible the mothers felt, their unease, how it wasn't easy for them, how uncomfortable they felt, the depression, the horror, the not knowing. And it's all those things that a mother would feel as she was waiting for news of her son fighting in a war far away.
Yeah, we just assume the Russians were bad boys going to Afghanistan, but we kind of forget about their mothers waiting back home in Rostov or Moscow or Leningrad or wherever. Yeah, they were concerned about their boys, and they certainly did not want to see their sons come back home in a zinc coffin. So this book talks about those sorts of things. And it caused controversy when first published in Russia, which eventually led to Alexievich spending 10 years in exile. So remember, Russia was communist for quite some time. I don't know if this book was published in Russia before or after the fall of the Soviet Union, but in any case, there was a controversy there, or a controversy. I guess you can pronounce it both ways. Mm-hmm. Americans, we say controversy with the accent on the first syllable. And it was controversial. That's the adjective form, which means it was the subject to a lot of debate. It made some people angry. It made some people happy, and they were fighting about it. So maybe they decided just not to publish it, or they said, you got to get out of here because your book is causing too much trouble. You're going to go into exile.
Yeah, exile is a punishment, which means you can't go back into the country. It can be a noun, as in our article. You can also use it as a verb, to exile someone. So Alexeyevich, basically it meant she couldn't live in the USSR, not in Belarus, in Ukraine, in Russia. She had to go and live somewhere else. Now, she may have been told to get out, although I suspect she probably chose exile. She just thought, if I stay, I'll probably be put in prison or worse. So I'm just going to get out. I'm going to go and live somewhere safe where I won't be punished. However, this didn't stop her from writing. The article says she went on to publish Voices from Chernobyl, an account of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. So people have probably heard the name Chernobyl. It was a nuclear factory in that Russia was using, and in the 1980s, it exploded in what's basically one of the world's worst nuclear disasters.
That's right. So, of course, she wrote a book using the voices of the people who were there. It's an account of the nuclear disaster that took place at Chernobyl, and the people got to talk about it and say what happened. And through interviews with more than 500 survivors over the course of 10 years, this work records the nuclear cleaners' horrible experiences after the disaster in 1986. So again, she interviewed a lot of people, actually more than 500 survivors, people who were there and still lived to tell the tale. And, of course, it recorded the cleaners there. Of course, someone has to go in there and clean it up, and, of course, they're subject or they're going to be exposed to a lot of radiation or fallout and stuff like that. So they had these horrible experiences. Something is horrible when it's just going to cause horror, something bad, something really, really scary.
Now, the book, Voices from Chernobyl, it makes a point of sharing the emotions of the people involved and criticizing the incompetence of the Soviet leadership. So if you make a point of something, you go, okay, this is going to be our main thing. We're going to make sure that this is done, that everybody sees it, okay? So Alexeyevich wasn't just writing a history of what happened. She was kind of focusing on, firstly, sharing emotions. How did people feel? How did the people who went in there feel? How did their families feel, the families of people who had lost their family members in the disaster? She really wanted to focus on, or make a point of, sharing their emotions, but also she wanted to lay some blame.
Indeed. So she made a point of that. She focused on that. She emphasized this. She made sure people knew this, to share the emotions of the people, but also to criticize the Soviet leadership because of their incompetence. And incompetence just means, they're not really qualified for the job, and they're not being responsible. They're screwing around too much. They're taking bribes. They're hanging out in karaoke bars all the time and stuff like that instead of doing their jobs. And you can describe a person or such a kind of person as being incompetent. I'm not going to name names right now, but I'm sure all of you can think of some names of political leaders who could be described as incompetent.
Okay, let's swiftly move on. For Alexeyevich, the article says, non-fiction is a genre that allows her to get close to reality. So, of course, we mentioned non-fiction. It's true stories. It's not made up. And it's a genre, a type of writing that allows her to get close to reality, which is what she wants to do. A genre, we talk about genres of writing, different types of stories, horror, science fiction, mystery, romance. These are all genres of writing. Non-fiction can be a genre or a collection of genres. True stories, histories, biographies of famous people. They're all different genres. But she wants to really get close to what really happened, the real stories, people's stories.
Sounds like a pretty good journalist here. And her works demonstrate a painful but enchanting reality in which she weaves different voices into a compelling narrative. So this sentence here kind of tells us about her style. Her works of literature, her books, basically, they demonstrate A painful but enchanting reality. To demonstrate just means to show, to let us see something, to see how it works. And it is an enchanting reality. If something is enchanting, that means it is very charming or attractive, and it gets your attention. So it's an enchanting reality. We could say her books are very gripping. They're page-turners. You just can't get enough of them. And she weaves all these different voices into a compelling narrative. To weave just means to kind of put things together as if you're making cloth. So you've got all these different voices together, the voices of those who experienced the things she's talking about. It's a compelling narrative, and compelling, well, that just kind of means it's something that keeps your attention. It makes you interested.
Yeah, forces you to feel things, really, I'd say.
And a narrative, of course, just means the story.
Exactly. And Alexeyevich is not finished. She's won this prize, but she's not going to rest on her laurels. She will continue to record the diverse voices of Russia in the future. Okay, diverse, which means many different kinds of. She's not only interested in one kind of story. She's listening to women, she wants to know children, the cleaners of the people who cleaned Chernobyl, people who were in wars, people who stayed home, people from Belarus, Ukraine, Russia itself, all of these different types and kinds of people, which is what we mean by diverse, just all these different Russian voices, all the voices that make up the real story of Russia. And she wants to hear them. She doesn't want to put her own story on top of it. She wants their stories, and she'll take their stories, kind of weave them together into her books.
Kind of interesting here. I'd like to check these books out myself. It would be nice to hear directly from the Russians as opposed to hearing about them through other people. So, yeah, check it out yourself, and probably if you read one of her books, you'll find out exactly why she won the Nobel Prize for Literature last year. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
接下来的这一句话呢，我们就要停下来看一下了。他说 It caused controversy when first published in Russia, which eventually 这个地方看到了 which 前面的逗点。好，我们知道英文里面提到关系代名词，你前面有逗点的话，那接下来这个关系子句就是一个补充说明用的非限定用法的关系子句。它要补充说明什么呢？因为它提到当时在苏联这书一出版的时候引发了争议，然后这个事实呢，最后就造成了这个作者他在外流亡了10年。所以前面整个句子 It caused controversy when first published in Russia 逗点后面就谈到这个事实造成后面的结果。谈完这第2本书，后面呢第3本书就是翻成车诺比的悲鸣。这本书内容也很重要，其中特别提到 It makes a point of sharing the emotions of the people involved. Make a point of 就是把东西呢强调它，看重它，着重它，特别说明它。它特别说明到分享相关人士的情感。还要注意到的就是 the people involved 一样的，我们把 involved 这个过去分词放在 people 后面，其实是讲 people who were involved。 那我们今天的节目呢就到这边结束，下次见。
Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and make sure you join us again next time for another edition of our program. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
And I'm Pat. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.